In case you didn't get it the first 2 times, my name is Darren. I'm a believer in Jesus Christ, recovering alcoholic. Thank you so much for being here tonight. If you've never been here before, you'll see that we have basically a 2-week schedule. So tonight is testimony night, which is, I think, everybody's favorite. We all love testimony, especially when we have one of our own, a live testimony. There's nothing better. But so if you come back next week, we will have a teaching instead of the testimony, which the teachings are full of great information that we all need. So come back. If this is like your first time and you're trying it, I tell everybody you got to come 2 weeks in a row so that you get the testimony and the teaching. Plus, if it's your first time, when we get done with large group, you'll come back in here for a class that we call 101 to give you a little more information. And hopefully to calm your fears for small group, give you a little bit of information on what to expect when you go to small group next week. But without any further ado, Franklin, if you would come up here tonight, Frank, we get the opportunity to hear Franklin's testimony. All right, I'll just say a quick prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for tonight. We thank you for Franklin. We thank you for what you're doing in his life. We thank you for what you've already done in his life. Thank you so much, Lord, for bringing him to us to celebrate recovery. He means so much to this ministry. We know, Lord, for all of us that have taken the time to go through step study and to work out our testimony and then to be able to get in front of people and give it. It takes work, but it's an honor also. And I just pray for your peace that passes all understanding to be with Franklin as he delivers his testimony to us. I pray that for every person here that you would open our hearts and our minds, and that you would help us to hear his message and specifically the pieces that each individual here that we need to relate to, Lord. There's a message here that you want us, every person in here, to pick up, to pick out of this. And we just pray for that. We thank you again in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.
All right, guys. So before we get started, real quick, the more I was coming to Celebrate Recovery, the more I saw of testimonies, the more I realized that these people weren't doing it for them. They were doing it for everybody in the audience. And so my prayer tonight is that somebody will hear something in my testimony that will really reach out and impact their life. So I'm Franklin. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ. Struggle with drugs, alcohol, and anger. I began my life in Memphis, Tennessee, where I lived with my mother, father, and younger brother. While in Memphis, I thought my family had a great life together. I can remember from a young age that we attended church on a fairly regular basis. Although we attended church regularly, we wouldn't be considered worshipers. We'd just be considered believers. I don't remember the exact denomination of our church, only that we were Christians and we believed in the Lord. My brother and I stayed active in sports, school, and after-school activities from a very early age. My mom made sure that my brother and I were always engaged in something to fill our time. I think this was in part because my dad was gone a lot working. My mother was very involved in the lives of my brother and myself and would even try and dominate our lives as we became older because she didn't want to lose her baby boys. I believe it was this overwhelming presence that would lead me to resist authority later on in life. My father was a hardworking man, and we knew he loved us very much, but he wasn't there all that much, so we didn't get to spend much quality time with him as we were growing up. When he was home, we'd always make the best out of our time. I always enjoyed spending time with him, even though he was the enforcer around our house. When I would mess up, I would often hear the popular phrase, "Just wait till your father gets home." As a child, I didn't understand that the punishments I would receive were because my parents cared about me and loved me. It just pushed me to resist authority further. My parents always raised me to do the right thing and to respect others, instilling very important morals and values, and helping me to establish values to live by. Unfortunately, the desire to do wrong outweighed my desire to live the values my parents had taught me. My family moved to a suburb of Chicago when I was in second grade when my father received a promotion. As you can imagine, his already busy schedule became even busier with his promotion, which led to more time away from the home. I began school almost immediately when we moved and had a lot of trouble fitting in as a new kid. I was picked on every day and had very few friends. The few friends I was able to make were a sort of social pariah like myself. Not by choice, but by labeling from the other kids. I started getting into fights in elementary school because the other kids wanted to pick on me and hurt me in any way that they could. Once they started picking fights with me, I began to fight back. This would be the start of my anger issues. I would get into fights regularly, either because I was being picked on or just to show everyone that I wasn't going to take their bullying. My family began attending church in Illinois, jumping from church to church, trying to find one that really fit our style. We stuck with the Lutheran church for a while, but stopped going because we just didn't like it. After a lull in our church-going experience, we began attending a local Methodist church regularly. I was involved in the youth group there and loved spending time with others who believed in God, but still wouldn't consider myself a worshiper. Once I began middle school, I made new friends. They too were outcasts. They didn't fit in with the popular kids. We set ourselves apart by starting fights with everyone. We were sick of being picked on and wanted to let everyone know that we wouldn't allow them to harm us and belittle us anymore. We also felt that we were no longer alone because we had other people going through the same things we were going through. We supported each other and leaned on each other for support. Once I graduated from middle school, I enjoyed my summer working at a horse stable where I rode, taught lessons, and worked. I began hanging out with two older girls who introduced me to marijuana, alcohol, and cigarettes. I began smoking marijuana and cigarettes and drinking when I worked with them. I loved the way these drugs made me feel, so I started having them get me weed, Marlboro Reds, and alcohol for me to do at home. My drink of choice from the get-go was Jack Daniels. I liked the way it tasted, loved the way it made me feel. It was sort of a way for me to relax and another way for me to resist authority. Once I began my freshman year of high school, I was drinking and smoking pot and cigarettes on a regular basis. At this point, I considered my use to be recreational. I had lunch with one of my friends from middle school and told him about the new things I've been trying over the summer, got him interested too. We began sneaking off campus each day during lunch to get high. And shortly after beginning the school year, we were known as the potheads of the school. And we loved that we were finally recognized for something. We began meeting up before school to get high and smoke cigarettes on the way. We would smoke during our lunch period, and we'd also get high after school. We loved our new reputations, but it wasn't enough. We decided to start drinking during school to really make a name for ourselves, and it worked. On top of drinking and doing drugs, I began selling marijuana in small personal use amounts, which led to the amounts being larger and larger as I saw the opportunity to make more money. Everyone knew us as party animals that would do anything to have fun, but being freshmen and stealing the reputation from the upperclassmen didn't make them too happy, and they began to lash out at us. We immediately reverted back to our old ways, and we fought back. We began fighting in high school regularly to make a new name for ourselves. We were already known as the party animals, but we wanted everyone to know that they couldn't mess with us and get away with it. So by sophomore year, we were fighting as often as we were partying. We were a well-known group throughout the school, and we felt like kings. This caused us to feel that we were invincible in every facet, which led to more drinking, more drug use in school, and even more drinking and drug use on the weekends. We weren't as invincible as we thought, and found this out after we all started getting detentions and suspensions for fighting. Not only did the student body know of our reputations, but the school administration did as well. They've been keeping a close eye on us, and we were usually able to avoid trouble one way or another. I was drinking and doing drugs more and more every year and started experimenting with other drugs, including hash, opiates, and prescription pills. By the end of my senior year, I'd been in so much trouble that I was almost denied the opportunity to walk at my graduation. In fact, I was suspended for the final week of school for causing trouble. I was okay with this because it meant I'd made a name for myself. Everyone wanted to be friends with me because I always had booze and drugs to provide, and no one would dare cross me because they'd seen the results. When challenged, my friends and I would not hesitate to defend our reputations. We were fighting so much that we'd hospitalized numerous people over the years and almost killed one during a massive brawl with a group of skinheads. So after graduating high school, I began taking courses at a local community college. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life at that point, but because of my active younger years and being involved in sports, I knew I enjoyed physical fitness, so I enrolled in class to be a personal trainer. After that, I began taking classes to major in psychology because the human mind was fascinating to me. After that, I found criminal justice and changed my majors yet again. While in school, I continued to party and found more opportunities to have fun. I continued doing drugs and drinking in class, which proved to be much easier than it was in high school. While taking college courses, I found out that my girlfriend was pregnant. And finding this out, I decided it was time to become an adult. On top of my college courses, I was working at a bar and also gained employment through the school doing security. I told myself that I would work hard to take care of my new family, but refused to give up my drinking and drug use. While working in one of the bars I was employed at, I met a guy that I went to high school with who was a well-known cocaine dealer. This meeting would mark the beginning of my cocaine use. I had a few beers with him, then we went out to his Cadillac to get high. This was something that I told myself I would never do because I had standards. Nothing on my nose, nothing in my veins. So after snorting my first line, I fell in love. After this meeting, I began going to his house on the weekends after I got off work at 3 o'clock in the morning to party with him and his friends, to drink and do drugs. I would leave my pregnant girlfriend at home alone to get high. After all, I was working hard and I deserved to unwind however I wanted. This is how I legitimized my actions. I wasn't hurting anyone, so what's the big deal? I had no idea that I was alienating myself from everyone who loved me to replace them with my party friends. I was later fired from the bar that I was working at for being drunk on the job. I was drunk every shift I worked, but this time I got caught and was let go. After finding employment at yet another bar, I began getting into a bar near my house when I was only 20. I made sure to befriend the entire staff so I was well known and wouldn't get ID'd. I did this at a neighboring bar as well and would bounce between the two to drink every night. Everything was going great for my party life until I was punched by a fellow bar patron and I almost stabbed him. Bystanders wrestled my knife from me and I fled the scene knowing that I would most certainly be arrested for aggravated assault as well as underage consumption. Instead of fleeing home, I fled to the neighboring bar to continue drinking. I was so intoxicated that I had no idea what I'd just done. I found out all the details the next day and just laughed about it. This told me that I was invincible. Again, this confidence boost in my invincibility came back to bite me. One winter night, when leaving the bar, I hit black ice in a curve, causing me to lose control of my car and hit a mailbox. I immediately picked up the pieces of my bumper, put them into my trunk, and fled the scene. In a panic, I decided to drive 4 hours away to my brother's college to figure out a game plan, and the Illinois State Trooper that pulled me over did that for me and gave me a DUI. I was taken back to the police station where I blew over twice the legal limit. I paid to have my car repaired, paid thousands of dollars in court and legal fees, and served 6 months probation. Even during my probation, I continued to drink excessively. My excessive abuse of alcohol to the point of blackout was a very common occurrence. After completing my probation, I met a guy named Johnny at a party. He was a rock star to me. He went out all the time, got drunk, did drugs, and got to hang out with beautiful women. We started hanging out on a regular basis and became very close friends. Johnny and I went down to the city of Chicago on July 20th, 2007 to spend the night with 2 of his girlfriends who had come into town from Florida. We went out as soon as the bars opened and we started drinking. We drank at countless bars over the entirety of the day and ended up at a club where Johnny knew the owner. The owner brought us each a bottle of vodka, which we finished fairly quickly. Needless to say, at this point, we were all a bit over the legal limit. After the club, we went back to the hotel room that the girls were staying in. Johnny called over one of his old friends who was a high-ranking Latin King member to bring us cocaine. We paid for the drugs, and we all took turns doing lines while pounding beers. Once we were out, he pulled out a sizable bag of coke from his pocket, dumped it on the table, told us to have at it. At this point, I was still sitting at the table with a rolled-up dollar bill in my hand and decided to see how much I could take in one drag. I blacked out for a bit after this, but came to when everyone was beginning to go to bed. I remember getting mad that no one would stay up with me and party, so I decided to take the party outside by myself. I loaded up my pockets with beer cans and took off. The events that followed are a bit fuzzy, believe it or not, but somehow I ended up in the parking garage of the hotel talking with someone. I don't know what happened, but the police were called on me, and all I knew at this point was that I was highly intoxicated, strung out on cocaine, and underage. I took off from the parking garage and rounded the corner where I saw a waist-high wall that ran behind the building and looked like it had a sidewalk on the other side. I knew I could get away without running into any trouble because I'd done enough drugs to make me invincible, so I thought. I was on top of the world. I could do anything. I was having the time of my life, and I felt like nothing could stop this, and this is about the time that I blacked out that evening. The last thing I remember is taking off running for that wall. That's the last thing I remember because there wasn't a sidewalk on the other side. There was nothing for 40 feet until I landed on the pavement below. I fell 40 feet and landed on my head. I was later told that when the police responded to the scene, I woke up and attacked 5 of them. It took them all to hold me down while paramedics tended to my injuries. I was taken to Northwest Memorial Hospital's emergency room, where I was admitted to the critical care unit in neurology. I spent 3 days in critical care until I was stable enough to be moved to a regular room on the neurology floor. As a result of my fall, I suffered a closed skull fracture, bleeding and loss of spinal fluid from my left ear, bilateral sensory hearing loss, broken ribs in my back where the ribs meet the spine, fractured left scapula that extends under the shoulder joint, a fractured right scapula, a bruised lung, a regular heartbeat, road rash, broken left temporal bone, profound hearing loss in the left ear, which led to permanent and complete hearing loss, a bruised frontal lobe of the brain, fractured left arm, fractured left ankle, massive soreness, and lots of bruising. While in the hospital, I was sent through a series of tests that included an MRI, 5 CT scans of my neck, 2 CT scans of my brain, scans of my spine, entire body scans, hearing tests, an ophthalmology exam, lab studies, and other tests which took up 8.5 pages of medical records. I was released from the hospital on July 27, 2007, and was sent home with my parents and a bill for $63,713.91. I went through a series of appointments after my release in the departments of neurology, orthopedics, trauma, audiology, and otolaryngology. My parents and girlfriend at the time didn't know what to think of my ordeal. I'd lied to them and told them that I was going to help a friend's grandmother move, and I'd have to stay the night there, so when they received a phone call saying that I'd been in an accident, they were completely blindsided. Apparently, as an addict, we have a tendency to lie to people to cover up our addictions. As I went through my outpatient recovery, one of my doctors decided to tell me how lucky I was on the day of my accident. He told me that when someone falls from 5 feet or higher, they have a 50% chance of surviving. I fell from 8 times that distance, so you can do the math. God spared me on that day. I knew He had bigger plans for my life. In Jeremiah 29:11, we're told, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope in the future." The Lord was speaking to me, and I heard Him, but I still wasn't ready to listen with all my heart. Other than my hearing, I ended up making a full recovery. I began working in bars again, still drinking and doing drugs. Clearly, I'd learned my lesson. I was let go from yet another bar for drinking on the job. After I was fired, I went drinking because I was upset I lost my job. Went to a local bar that I frequented where I met a bouncer named Phil. Phil told me about a company his brothers owned and that they were hiring. I began working with him and his brothers for an insurance restoration company called Stormguard Construction as a salesman, where I made an average commission of $200,000 a year. At this point, I was 21 years old and I was making more money than I knew what to do with. I would go out drinking with Phil every night after work, and he ended up introducing me to his friend Frank, who sold cocaine. We'd go drinking every night and then end up at Frank's house afterwards to drink more, do cocaine, and play darts in his kitchen. Phil and I were there so often that we met Frank's young daughter numerous times when she was awoken by our inebriated rowdiness and came into the kitchen, only to find her father with 2 strangers, highly intoxicated, with massive amounts of cocaine on the countertops. There was no hiding what we were doing. This young girl has to live with everything she saw, but it still wasn't enough to stop me. I thought it was just her being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Not my fault. I didn't do this. Frank did this, right? Blaming others for my addictions turned out to be something that I was fantastic at. I was the CEO of the blame game. Nothing was ever my fault. I was found ways to legitimize my actions. Less than 1 year from the time I started working for Storm Guard, all of us at the Chicago location moved to Oklahoma for the winter to continue working. We made a killing there with all the natural disasters that came through the state, and we all decided we'd stay after winter because the money was so good. I thought I was living the dream. I was able to make my own schedule to accommodate my drinking and drug use, all while making more money than I knew what to do with. My cocaine use was spiraling out of control until one night we were unable to find our drug of choice. Phil went out in a last-ditch effort to find anything he could and ended up coming back with a bag of crack cocaine. We smoked the entire bag in one sitting, and needless to say, we were hooked. Cocaine was great and all, but crack just hit you so much faster and so intensely that plain old cocaine just couldn't measure up. I continued to snort cocaine and abuse prescription drugs, and now I was adding crack into the mix. All this combined with my alcohol use had me in a constant state of inebriation. I would say that the only time I wasn't messed up was when I was sleeping, but I drank so much that I never really recovered. I ended up meeting my wife Heather while she was working as a bartender at Coyote Ugly Saloon. I frequented this bar as it was right around the corner from my house. I could walk there every night, drink as much as I wanted, walk home without having to worry about getting another DUI. Once we began dating, I knew she wouldn't approve my drug use on top of my apparent alcohol abuse, so I'd sneak around and do most of my drugs while I was working. Sometimes I'd even not go into work just so I could do drugs all day long. I was doing great. I was living 2 lives, and I loved each one. There was only one problem, though. My contracting job with Storm Guard stopped paying everyone, and I was now out of drinking and drug money. In a panic, I decided to join the Army. That'd solve all my problems, right? I'd almost joined straight out of high school and decided it was now time for me to serve. When I told my parents I was enlisting, my mom begged me not to join the Army. So I called her, told her I was joining the Army, and needless to say, she was a little bit displeased. I told her that I was going to be looking into different jobs. She begged me not to join the infantry. So when I called her to tell her that I joined the infantry, she was out to dinner with her mother and my dad, and she ran outside and cried her eyes out. I knew she was proud of me, but I also knew that she feared for me joining during a time of war. I went home to Illinois to visit my parents and daughter before I left for OSIP training. While there, I also spent time with friends at night. One night, I was at a bar saying my goodbyes, then decided to drive home. I was okay to drive though. I mean, after all, I was now going to be a soldier. So, what could hurt me? The parked car I slammed into, that's what. I was almost home when I lost control of my truck, speeding around a corner and crashed into a parked car. The front end of my truck was totaled and was inoperable. In my drunken stupor, I was trying to figure out how I was going to cover this up so I didn't get into trouble when I saw red and blue lights coming around the corner. Took off running through yards, jumping fences, and avoiding arrest. I was successful in my flight and was able to sit in the bushes a few houses down from my parents' house watching the police as they combed the area for me. I had my dad drive me to the police department the following day, where I was arrested for hit and run. When breathalyzed, I blew well over the legal limit and had stopped drinking at least 8 hours prior. I was somehow able to escape another DUI conviction in court, and my charges were pled down to simple misdemeanors. I left for infantry OSIP training on August 10, 2010 at Fort Benning, Georgia. I completed my training and was immediately assigned to the 172nd Infantry Brigade in Grafenberg, Germany. Shortly after my arrival, I was deployed to the Sharana district of Paktika province in eastern Afghanistan. I earned my paycheck there. I came back with stories, I came back with memories, I also came back with nightmares. It was this deployment that made me realize I'd signed up to see things that people shouldn't have to see. Upon my return to Germany, I drank heavily. There was a reason though, and it was a good one. I was celebrating coming back alive from my nightmare. I mean, we were out of Afghanistan after all. But I was wrong. Sometimes a soldier leaves war, but the war never leaves them. I was drinking to medicate. It was the only thing that seemed to relax me. I drank until I couldn't feel feelings. My philosophy was, what's my philosophy? Oh. If I drink about it, I don't have to think about it. This led to a lot of conflicts inside my house. My family was worried about me and my drinking. but I stuck to my guns and let everybody know that I had it under control. I could stop whenever I wanted to because I wasn't an alcoholic. My alcohol abuse continued despite frequent conflicts resulting from my drinking. I still didn't see what the big deal was. I didn't have a problem with my drinking. Everyone else did. Not my problem. I moved to Colorado Springs in May of 2013, where I was assigned to Fort Carson's 4th Infantry Division. This was a very prestigious unit in the Army, so guess what? Time to celebrate. What better way to do that than to go out drinking? As you may have guessed, as you may have guessed, my drinking did not slow down. Heather was growing increasingly upset with my abuse, so I began to hide my drinking. I would drink at work and at home, do my best to cover it up. I still denied that I had a problem. Again, it was everyone else who had the problem with my drinking, not me. At this point, I was attending church regularly at Pikes Christian Church, and I absolutely loved it. I became involved in a Bible study group and was trying to grow in my faith. I ended up being saved before my second deployment. This time, I was sent to the Dan District of Kandahar Province in southern Afghanistan. I served 9 months there and returned to Fort Carson only to pick up right where I left off with my drinking. I still drank to excess, but I still refused to admit I had a problem. One Sunday night, after my return, Heather and I had a huge fight. I immediately went to the liquor store at about 8 o'clock at night and bought a bottle of Evan Williams whiskey. I drank the entire bottle in one sitting and woke up the next day for work still highly intoxicated. This was the last straw for me. I finally knew that and could admit that I had a problem. Later that week in my Bible study, I mentioned my episode and someone told me about Celebrate Recovery. He called Darren, the leader of the local group at Pikes Christian Church, and Darren called me to give me information about the program. I thought about it for a while and decided I'd go check it out. When I arrived at the church, though, I decided it wasn't for me and I almost left. I'd already come all the way, though, so I may as well go in, see what it's all about. I met a few guys who had different hurts, habits, and hang-ups. I was still a bit apprehensive about continuing the program, but God spoke to me and told me that this is where I was meant to be. After attending a few more sessions, I found hope and support through Celebrate Recovery. This would be my forever family. While attending meetings and looking at myself, I was able to hand over my addiction to drugs and alcohol to the Lord while giving up my anger as well. I've been drug-free for over 6 years now. And have been able to live without alcohol. Been able to live without alcohol for over 2. Actually just quit smoking 6 months ago. While I was on my 3rd deployment to Afghanistan. There truly is hope in the Lord and in Celebrate Recovery. God is just, but God is good, and I've seen it firsthand through my struggles. I finally stopped trying to solve my own problems and have partnered with the Lord on my road to recovery. In Matthew 19:26, we learn that with man this is impossible, but with God all things are possible. So praise be to the Lord who's made all this possible. Thanks for letting me share.